Namaskar and welcome to DGI with Sri and Sri. Today is September 8th, Wednesday, and this is episode number 241. Here are the main points. The rebel leader in Panjshir says that it was Pakistan Army and the ISI that is responsible for military actions and not the Taliban. The ISI leader was also in Kabul to iron out differences between Baradar and Haqqani. The US Army will be back in Afghanistan due to terror-related issues, Senator Lindsey Graham predicts, as Chinese electronic warfare plane enters Taiwan air defense zone. Philippine general calls for an integrated strategy with Taiwan and Japan to counter China. US-funded Wuhan Research Lab raises questions on COVID-19 origins, and India reaches 700 million vaccine doses milestone with single vaccine doses at 541 million and active cases falling below 400,000. Sridharji, welcome to P Guru's channel. Today we are going to have him joining via an audio link. Sir, what do you think is happening in Afghanistan, sir?
Good morning to everybody, and excited to be back, and we kick off the week. What's happening in Afghanistan? I think Afghanistan is moving from the impasse into formation of a government. There was the challenge around the last province or the last area of resistance, which is the Panjshir. It looks like, based on all the reports, that Panjshir seems to be under the control of the Afghanistan. So I think they are now in the process of forming the government. There are at least 3 to 4 leaders in the government who seem to be in the most wanted terror list of United Nations. It's interesting as to how this is going to be accommodated as the transition. That is the highlight, and it's very clear that as Mr. Masood has indicated, there seems to be clear and impregnable evidence of the interference of one of the neighboring countries in the internal affairs of Afghanistan.
And Sridharji, Biden says that he will judge Taliban government by its actions rather than words, and listed terrorists among the new members in the Taliban government. Now, this is going to pose an interesting problem for the United States. What if they send their interior minister, Mr. Sirajuddin Haqqani, to represent the government in the United Nations? Are they going to, pick him up and then give the 10 million bounty? It's very interesting, sir. And this is the first time, I think, where US is forced to acknowledge that even a terrorist is a viable political leader.
I think there's been instances before, especially as it relates to Iran. UN Charter permits that New York, and specifically the UN location, to be for all practical realms and purposes outside the US jurisdiction. If UN nations so decide that they should be invited, and he is the person who is coming, and if UN exceeds, United States has no ability to intervene in this specific matter. This is the accepted norm that they will have to follow. Only thing is that it will cause tremendous amount of embarrassment to United States. While these events unfold, there's also the 9/11 trials, which is resuming with Mr. Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, to be further tested in the courts. So therefore, I think this is going to play out quite badly, whichever way the situation goes, causing tremendous amount of challenges for Mr. Biden and his administration, the way they have conducted the affairs.
A rebel leader in Panjshir says that it was the Pakistan Army and ISI that is responsible for military actions and not the Taliban. The ISI leader, I should say, was also in Kabul to iron out differences between Baradar and Haqqani. Protests erupt in Afghanistan against Taliban and with anti-Pakistani slogans. Taliban flag painted outside former US embassy in Kabul. Pictures have emerged of the same. And US Army will be back in Afghanistan due to terror-related issues, predicts Senator Lindsey Graham. Sridharji, I can't see any silver linings here, with now the population itself picking up the gauntlet and protesting. I don't know what is going to happen, sir. The future looks rather bleak for Taliban in Afghanistan.
Well, I think in summary, if you look at all the key headlines, it doesn't matter which aspect you want to touch on. We seem to have a problem. First and foremost, even before the government is formed, the evidence or indications are they seem to have used some type of drones in the attack in quelling the resistance from Panjshir, which has not gone down well. Then, even before they commence the government, you seem to have protests, going agog in Afghanistan, in the streets of Afghanistan, led by women, and also anti-Pakistani slogans. You have that. Then you have infighting between the Taliban and the Haqqanis. As you know, that both Haqqani network and Taliban was propped up by one of the nations. So even from the formation point of view, there seems to be challenges. And the global, nations have been very silent as to, what this transition is. So there is no transitional government. That was the original agreement that was part of this exit plan. There's no transitional government. There's no ability to enforce it because Qatar seems to have washed off its hands, as well as the United States seems to have washed off the hands, which makes Biden to say he will watch what the actions are rather than by words. So when you look at the whole architecture or the whole suite of events that's unfolding in Afghanistan, there's lots of things that is, bothering everybody in the world.
One thing I noticed, Sridharji, is almost no one is wearing masks in Afghanistan.
I think, what is it that one can say, sir? Even, there's, we have mask on, mask off mandate in United States. So therefore we have mask on and mask off mandates in Europe. So therefore, we don't even know whether anybody is getting tested in Afghanistan for masks for COVID. None of the people who were boarding the planes were tested for COVID, and they're all likely to be tested shortly. So if under these circumstances, these in these countries there's no government, or there is no governance. Everything runs on autopilot, or everything runs on a mob frenzy. So there should be no surprise here, sir, that there is no testing or nobody is wearing masks in Afghanistan.
India and Russia have a common position and approach on Afghanistan, says Indian envoy, and the nations to meet on September 8th. And let's move on to global news. Singapore's vaccinated travel lane opens despite rise in COVID cases, with Germany and Brunei first. South Korea becomes the 8th country to fire ballistic missiles from submarines. Hong Kong police arrests Tiananmen protest organizers in the latest crackdown on pro-democracy elements. If there's one thing, the Chinese are relentless, Sridharji.
Well, Chinese are relentless and very focused. They have a very clear objective as to what they want to accomplish. The good news about Singapore is that this is the first country which is attempting in ASEAN region this concept of a vaccinated lane. Those who are vaccinated will be allowed to enter the country, which is the first signs that the ASEAN is coming back into the mainstream. As far as the Hong Kong police is concerned, which you have alluded to in the Tiananmen Square arrest, this is just one more. One more item that's on the anvil from a Chinese point of view to say that Hong Kong is no longer an independent territory or governed under an independent territory under one China policy. It's effectively China all over. And any attempt to do any kind of democratic activity will be put down with iron fist. That seems to be the message that is coming out. You can see from corporations to companies to legislative councils to the new security laws that they have enacted in terms of who can contest elections and what type of activity can happen within the little island territory is now moving on to the other facet, which is no democratic protests allowed in Hong Kong. So which simply implies that it is completely gone out of the radar of the global community. If you recall that there was sanctions being attempted and being imposed by the United States as Hong Kong was as these new laws came into effect, but the world community has decided to just ignore and move on because there's too many issues. Very unfortunate, but that's where we are on as far as Hong Kong and China is concerned.
As Chinese electronic warfare plane enters Taiwan air defense zone, a Philippine general calls for an integrated strategy with Taiwan and Japan to counter China. So does this mean that now, as a bloc, the Southeast Asian nations, along with Taiwan and Japan, are going to try and present a unified front against China, Ji?
It just tells you that there is a lack of cohesion. It also tells you that there are challenges in terms of what exactly the US position is. We're going to have a Quad meeting in Washington, D.C., probably end of the month. They're getting ready. We have a BRICS meeting that is going on. But it's very clear that with this persistent and continuous intrusion into Taiwan, there's growing concerns that it was Japan first, but now Philippines has joined the list and saying, okay, if he's coming into Taiwan, I'm not too far. I could be the next nation that they want to take over. So we got to come back and, maybe we have to do all these things by ourselves. And that is what prompted the guy to basically say, hey, we got to have an integrated strategy. To me, the message is very concerning because there is no leadership and there is no voice. When we get to the US section, we'll talk about it because how quickly the Biden administration has moved on from one topic to another.
And the Tibetan government in exile expresses willingness to speak with China. I wonder what the reason today now is. Sridharji, your thoughts?
I think my thoughts are that whether this is a planted news or whether it is genuine or whether there are some tensions within the government in exile as Mr. Dalai Lama ages, whether there are questions whether they can continue to live in this type of state, which is partially in exile, with the hope that one day, Tibet will be opened up. I mean, there are genuine reasons for people to be completely ignored while massive changes are taking place in Tibet. Remember, Xi Jinping has made a visit. I think it's almost after 4 decades, a leader from China has made into the country. There's lots of changes going on. Tibetans in exile in India are not, fools. They see what's happening in Taiwan. They've seen what's happened in Hong Kong. They say, are we going to be completely cut out and become irrelevant? So there may be some, internal, frictions emerging and saying dialogue may be the better way to go rather than shunning ourselves.
And Iran says that 2 Navy ships it sent to Africa and Russia have returned safely, demonstrating its prowess. Sridharji, Iran doesn't have a big fleet, does it?
It doesn't have a big fleet, but it did send one attack ship, and as well as the one is one which has, a fleet of naval forces. So it has sent 2 ships around. It touched the African continent. It went to Russia. It probably was involved in joint exercises with Russia, which again we covered in DGI. And the story is that what this news item is very specific because there are 3 important things that are going on. Okay, it's the first time we're covering on the defense aspect. We have covered enough that they are oil, so they have violated the global norms in terms of the sanctions. So there's oil. They've even supplied oil to Lebanon. The second issue, which is, I would say the first, which is the enrichment of uranium. So they're going on with the enrichment of uranium and they're denied access to United Nations. Now they're saying, their battleships, Navy can navigate the world, unhindered and uninterrupted. The word that they use as a PR is world, but actually it was in African as well as in the Russian waters, which are less hostile compared to the other places. So Iran is flexing its muscles, violating the rules on one side, flexing its muscles on the other side. Again, there is no global voice. The global voice is gone.
And security is high in Paris as the 2015 jihadist attack trial begins to judge 20 men believed to be involved in the attack. German ambassador to China dies after 2 weeks on the job. Wow, that is surprise, sir. Can you share a little bit more data on this?
The data can only be speculative, but right now the Germany is basically passing it off as probably very unfortunate incident and caused as a result of a heart attack, and he passes away, which they 2 weeks into the job, maybe coincidence, but we'll see. There's nothing controversy as yet that has emerged. But the fact that it's a news item, one has to look at it with some skepticism to see what comes out of it. So we don't want to get ahead of the game. Also, I don't know whether people remember that is going back November 13, 2015, there was a coordinated attack by a whole bunch of people, which caused probably one of the worst terror attacks in Europe. 130 people, passed in sports stadiums, bars, restaurants, and in a major art theater as well. And those trials, imagine that is November 13, 2015. We are now in 2021. The trials kick off. The main arrest, the chief person, he will be on show today, or is on show as we speak in Paris, and under reinforced protection, etc., etc. All around the time when you have this Afghan issue and 9/11 looming here in United States, 20th anniversary looming, plus those trials restarting. So it's very interesting that this whole issue of terrorism versus normalization of terrorism seems to be happening, which we need to be worried about. PG.
Boris Johnson to raise taxes to address health and social care crisis in UK. Sridharji, isn't United Kingdom one of the higher taxed countries?
It is relatively higher compared to others, but compared to rest of the Europe, UK is considered to be fairly what shall I say, competitive to other socialistic nations in Europe. The reason why this is getting highlighted is that remember, conservatives are tax friendly, not not otherwise. And the fact that he has to raise taxes much against the consternation of or angst of the conservatives is that this is a reflection of the COVID-19 crisis, which is when you have economic shutdowns and economic chaos, then clearly there is an implication in terms of how you are going to run the COVID-19 programs, how you're going to run the government, and how the government needs to be funded. Remember, UK was under Margaret Thatcher. UK was one of the, they went on a very massive selling of public assets and moving towards a much more a free market economy, moving away from a labor-oriented structure. This is what in India they're calling it as the monetization of assets that is going on in India. So this particular thing highlights the problems that the world faces in terms of navigating COVID. There's only one country which doesn't seem to have a problem in dealing with its reserves, which is China. And there's another country which doesn't seem to, because it doesn't care, that's Russia. So if you take these two countries out, rest of the world is dealing with it in a much more, by drawing down and borrowing in the markets, because there's no revenue on the receipts on the balance sheet of the governments.
And let's take a quick look at United States news. US-funded Wuhan Research Lab raises questions on COVID-19 origins. Biden wants $30 billion for disaster relief, Afghan refugee resettlement, and stopgap funding needs to be approved by the House as an interim spending bill. Pelosi may add debt ceiling to the infrastructure and budget bill. Biden to announce six-step plan to combat Delta variant. Texas, Florida, and now Arizona declare vaccine mandates are illegal and unconstitutional. Srijati, taken together, in the US, Delta is a big concern. And now they are trying to add more bills to spend more money. What do you see moving forward? It appears as if Biden has completely shut his mind out for, on what is happening in Afghanistan. What is your take, G?
I think that you hit the nail. Your assessment is very spot on, which is effectively say, global affairs, I'm getting dinged by the world. I'm getting dinged in the United States. My ratings is going down faster and faster every day. He was heckled and harassed when he visited the Louisiana sites. So I think he says, I'm now going to focus on the domestic issues because I'm not very popular and I don't know what I'm doing. I mean, I'm not saying that, I'm saying this with a bit of tongue in cheek, which is to say, I'm not doing well, so let me get on to the domestic. So what you're witnessing in here more specifically is, as you rightly observed, we have given the numbers. We gave the numbers on the Monday show or the Sunday show, the special show, that we are pretty close to 9 million active cases, of which about 2 million or just over 2 million is in California. So the Delta variant is very much causing havoc. Thanks to Mr. Biden and ubiquitous and all-pervasive support that he enjoys with the mainstream media, he is getting no flack. Flip the coin. If it was Trump, they would have roasted and toasted him, alive in the media. But this is Mr. Biden, so he's the darling of the mainstream, and not one media. I mean, you can look at, go and check at any of the mainstream media, CNN, New York Times, Washington Post. They do not give any numbers on this alarming. Just to give you, the number 2 country in active cases is Britain at some 1.25 million active cases, whereas United States is at 9 million. It's an astonishing number, and nobody is saying anything about it, and that is playing havoc in the minds of the people. And what do they say? We need vaccines and vaccines and vaccines. When there's a lot of resistance, that's why we have not gone past that 55, 56% the vaccination adoption rate. So you have now this gentleman focusing. So he says, how many stimuluses we have had? We have had more than $6.5 trillion of money allocated both for economic and COVID-related activities in terms of the addressing. Under the pretext of COVID, we seem to have, are tinkering with roads, to broadband, to hospitals, to local administration budgets, and we are also sending money to overseas governments. Everything that you can think of, which is the broad democratic agenda, is being spun out under the pretext of the COVID-19. Except we have not addressed the main issue, which is the rising and alarming cases of Delta variant. Now, there has been a theory running around, at least partly in the United States, that these vaccines are ineffective against the core Delta variants, but they believe that they may be able to tackle it. And for that, they say you need a booster dose. And the booster dose officially gets kicked off on September 20th. It initially starts, or it has started, with those people who have less immunity or immunosuppressed category of people, or those with age plus category are being given the initial vaccines. So in a nutshell, sir, what he's saying is Mr. Biden, contrary to Mr. Johnson, has what you call an open checkbook. So all he needs to do is to tell Madam Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, I need another $30 billion to spend. Why? Because I have IDA, I have Afghan refugees who have come in, I need to take care of them, plus I need to spend more money on interim. So before you release all these trillions of dollars of budget, give me money. It's a very, very sad state of affairs. And finally, to wrap up, and so we finish, is that we have states which are saying you can't mandate because it is illegal.
And let's take a look at India news. Indian External Affairs Minister makes the case for why a differentiated approach is needed for dealing with China in a post-Galwan world. He also makes the case for Quad as the meetings are to take place in Washington later this month, with bilateralism and multilateralism not working. PM Modi to chair BRICS summit on the 9th of September, with COVID-19 pandemic, global and regional tensions being the focus. India and Australia to deepen defense ties and will host the first 2+2 bilateral meetings in New Delhi. A lot of things happening in India as well as in New York, Sridharji.
Lots of things happening. I think it's a very positive statement, which is to say, while you need to continue the dialogue with China, but it's no longer the sequential path. Sequential path here is that India says something, China says something, and China doesn't, at the end of the day, doesn't toe the line. But at least there was a dialogue going on. Now, at least India is beginning to acknowledge that it has to have its own position while assuming that this dialogue will bring about some outcome. I think they are also come to the conclusion dialogues will not be, as was the case with Galwan and post-Galwan, what's happening. But at least there is a temporary impasse as one looks at. But I've heard some news which used to say that Xi Jinping has appointed a new commander for the Indo-Tibetan area. But we'll cover that as more news is, as we learn more about it. That's one aspect on the China as far as India is concerned. But what is important is that he's pointing out about the Quad. The message. I read his script. I didn't listen to the interview. He's saying that bilateralism is not scalable. It is only as far as a country is concerned. Multilateralism did not work on any global issues. Most recent being COVID-19, around the asymmetric distribution of vaccine availability and non-availability, and including the TRIPS issue. So therefore, we need to think about a different structure. Different structure is whether there is a regional cooperation or a less number of nations working together to solve a problem. Now he's picked Quad. Now we just discussed it under the global section, that Philippines and Japan and Taiwan working on an issue which Quad is supposed to focus on, regional global security, and that was predominantly on South China Sea, Indian Ocean, and Indo-Pacific. He's a brave man to be thinking that the Quad is the solution to this. I'm a personal skeptic of Quad. It doesn't mean that they may not get it right, but especially under Biden's administration, I think they have gone back to the old failed route of multilateralism rather than this model. To wrap up, the BRICS. Why they're still holding BRICS, I don't understand. South Africa is in deep trouble. Ceremonially and figuratively, Mr. Modi is chairing the session. You take a look at those BRICS nations. Brazil is somewhere. South Africa is nowhere. You have China, Russia, India in between, trying to muscle their way out. And again, there is no alignment between the three nations. There's at least some coordination between Russia and India. But when you take China, Russia, and India, clearly take Afghanistan for as a case may be, which is in the intersection of these three countries. Nothing much there. So I am very skeptical, but I'm glad that India is at the forefront of these discussions. The most positive news amongst this is the India-Australia. The 2+2 dialogue has worked between India and Japan. The 2+2 dialogue was working between India and United States. That was the platform under which the whole thing, including the India-Japan and Japan-United States dialogue, began to happen. Now, Australia is into the fold, and that's very positive because Australia is in the same kind of a corridor when you take the Indian Ocean. So that's a positive development as far as in that global news items that India is focused on.
And India reaches 700 million vaccine doses milestone, with single vaccine doses at 541 million. Active cases have fallen behind or below 400,000. Fitch, on the contrary, says India lags vaccine rates and hence its B rating for sovereign funds. That is a surprise, Sriji.
I think they have I think we covered this again. There's a lot of politics between some of these rating agencies and India goes. We covered this last week, which is based on all indications that the deficit will be 6.3%. The first quarter deficit seems to be a little lower than what they had predicted. It's on track. But having said that, you find that Fitch giving again, digging India and saying the ratings are low. The numbers tell you a different story. The number of vaccines that India has infused as dose one is greater than many nations put together, most notably G7 nations. I think India now is beginning to say, I have enough reserves. It's okay. If you want to give me B rating, I'll take it. That's the position. And the same positive side, India has crossed 700 million. It's an astonishing number. And they've been clocking, their days they're clocking, 8 to 10 million. Remember, United States is yet to hit 10 million number, which is the first nation to have kicked off vaccines. It has not reached. It reached 7 million. It has never reached 10 million. Whereas India, at least on more than few days, it has crossed the 10 million number. So I think India is on its way. It has seen mild effects of COVID. It saw some cases rising. Again, it's back to well below that 40,000 mark in terms of daily active cases. And it's well below 400,000. Remember, not too long ago, we were at 310, 307,000 active cases, and we were contemplating when it will go below 300 into the 200,000 mark. But anyway, let's hope that everything goes well, because it's the festive season, holiday season in India. We don't want any further aggravation from an Indian point of view on the rising cases.
And let's take a look at markets now. Disappointing payroll data and rising Delta variant weighs on investors' minds as the markets take a hit. Tech stocks gain and interest rates marginally move up on Tuesday. Sridharji, we are putting up the numbers for you to take a look at and give your thoughts, sir.
Yes, I think the Dow was down 260 points, which is effectively, Dow is a reflection of the economy. Those stocks which reflect the performance as the world attempts, as United States attempts to come back to mainstream economic activity. Two things cause concerns, as we have covered this. One is the rising Delta cases, and I think the second is the not a great number story on the employment numbers, for which Mr. Biden said it is all, I blame Delta, and that is the reason why the numbers are low. S&P, was very modest relative to Dow Jones. Nasdaq always reacts usually the opposite way because it is dominated by tech stocks. Marginally went up. The energy seems to be in the same band, which is 68 to 71. It didn't move further up on lack of clarity around what the global growth would look like, and only now we are beginning to see some little traces of green shoots emerging around the world. So you will begin to see the oil prices move up. There is a general theory prediction that we will hit the $100 or somewhere close to $100 by end of the year on the oil prices. Coming to the rates chart, if one carefully looks at the interest rates, especially the 10-year T-notes, one can see that the rates are slowly but surely creeping up. Though in this chart, it shows everything to be unchanged or negative, but we are at 1.37. We have added 18 basis points, 1.19. We have moved to 1.37. Signs that inflation does have. But don't be surprised if tomorrow it dips, back to 1.25. But at least today, the number seems a little bit on the high. The Bitcoin, which has taken a hit 10%, it was 50,000, 51,000. It has gone to 46,000. I think, as we mentioned, Ethereum is where you begin to see continued traction. These gyrations, though the pundits attribute it to El Salvador becoming mainstream, and that has caused some hiccups in the stock, which is when it goes mainstream, this alternative, that is government-linked cryptos, probably will marginalize what you call as the real prices of these intermediate cryptos that are playing in the market in the absence of clear position by the governments. So, but this, to me, we have again spoken about this crypto and where the market will be. You will begin to see balance shifting away from little bit away from Bitcoin and more going towards Ethereum and Dogecoin and other types of stocks as the market begins to accelerate. But we do expect by the year end these stocks to have done even further, more price movements further up, as we spoke last week.
Thank you, Sridharji. And that brings us to an end of today's episode. We'll be back again tomorrow, bright and early. Thanks for joining. Thanks for liking. Thanks for subscribing. And also thanks for sharing. Namaskar.
Namaskar. Have a